Yes, ma'am.
What are your thoughts on fracking and the free-schooling, universities and so forth?
Fracking?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think fracking it's an interesting technology, but it's a really, really bad idea because it's a fossil fuel idea. And I say, you know, they say fossil fuels. I believe we could get off of fossil fuels completely in 10 years. But in order to do that, we'd have to have the kind of infrastructure project. First of all, this grid that I mentioned briefly in my speech. We need a smart grid so that here in South Dakota, we are number 4 in the nation for wind energy potential. Number 4 in the nation. We are like the Saudi Arabia of wind. And of course, you all know why that is. Just walk outside. It's wind. Problem is, we can't generate that energy here and get it to South Carolina or Southern California or Texas where it's needed because we just don't have the grid for it. Now, building that grid is something we certainly could do, but it is an infrastructure project on par with the interstate highway system. Now, we built the interstate highway system, and that, by the way, wasn't a Democratic idea. That was President Eisenhower. That was a Republican idea. And they came in and built that interstate highway system, and everyone in this room, everyone in the country benefits from that interstate highway system. We could do the same thing with our electric grid. We could make it so that we could generate energy anywhere and move it anywhere, which would be a really great thing. And we could do it right away. I mean, 10 years we could be off of fossil fuels. A lot of people have said to me, well, oh, no, it'll take 50 years. We really got to go slow with all this. Well, we really can't go slow. We could do it in 10 years. In 1960, when President Kennedy did his inauguration address, I mean, the big line from that address was, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, which was a great, great idea, and I totally agree with that. But another thing he said was that in 10 years, he wanted to have a man walk on the moon. Now, this was before we even had a man in space. I mean, the Russians were ahead of us. The Russians had Sputnik up. We were behind the Russians. 10 years later, Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. We can do that kind of project, but in order to do it, we have to work together. And that means we have to work together with Republicans. This Republican Party that has gone so far to the right and become actually a racist party now, that party needs this sound defeat in this election so they can come back and be the responsible party that they used to be. Because we need them all to work together. You know, our ideas are not necessarily always right. We need to have people pick our ideas apart and say what's wrong with them and ask questions about them. You know, a great example of that is the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, finally, thanks to President Obama, the Affordable Care Act was passed. Now, the Affordable Care Act is probably not the best way to do universal health care, but it is a national health care policy. So we now have a national health care policy we can debate. And that's what we need, is a debate. But we don't get a debate from the Republican Party. What we get from the Republican Party is, we want to repeal it, repeal it, repeal it. And they say repeal and replace because everybody says repeal. What then? Well, they say repeal and replace, but I don't suspect any of you, at least I, haven't heard with what they would replace it. They just want to repeal it. And I think the main reason they want to repeal it is because that is the cornerstone of the black man president who brought it forward. And they hate it, and they want to get rid of it. We need to have a real, a fair player debating the issues. Do you have some problems with the Affordable Care Act? As a matter of fact, I do. I think the Affordable Care Act is lacking one major thing, and that is the public option. And if the public option was available, I suspect that almost everybody would take it. And because I don't think that insurance is really the right thing for health care. Everybody needs health care. It's just, everybody can and will need it. It's a civil right, in my opinion. And everybody should have it. So, a public option is probably where we're eventually going to get to, but we don't have a fair player in this fight right now. So we're stuck with what we have, and we've got to go forward with it. So that's the kind of thing we need to do. We need, and I said it in my speech, it's really, really true. We need policies that are inclusive, not divisive. And the problem that the Republicans have is that they're all about dividing the country. They're all about hate. They're all about, like, this terrible massacre down in Florida. Well, this guy had the idea that he hates homosexuals. And so what's he do? He goes in and kills as many of them as he can. What a terrible thing. This transgender bill, I mean, the bathroom bill, they call it, where They don't want to let, they want to regulate, the Republicans want to regulate the bathrooms. Now, this is the Republican Party that claims to be, the party of less government. Well, isn't less government when you're regulating who goes into the bathroom? It's not. So I think that's the major thing that this election, I hope, is about bringing back a real good two-party system. A two-party system doesn't work if one of the parties is absolutely my way or no way. And that's the way the Republican Party is now. So I know there's an awful lot of Republicans in South Dakota, and they've been Republicans, and their parents before them and their grandparents were all Republicans, and we've been a very, very red state. But I also think that even those Republicans are mostly good, fair-minded individuals, and they certainly aren't racist. And so I'm hoping that that issue alone will propel not only me and Paula Hawks and Corey, but and of course Hillary Clinton into office this fall. I certainly hope that's what happens, and I'll be very happy if that works.
Me too, man.